Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Illuminated Movement Astrology. I'm Nikki, your astrologer, here today to talk about Saturn and Neptune in Aries through the houses of the zodiac. So, for all rising signs, let's get started. Okay, if you hear a little bit of background noise, I apologize. It's our parrot. She loves to get rambunctious as soon as I start recording, and I'm really trying to get this out in between a couple of clients so that you all can get a better sense of how this transit is going to show up in your own individual chart. So again, I apologize if you hear any little bit of rambunctious noise or even a little bit of talking. It's our parrot. So she loves to say hi. Anyway, back to astrology. For those of you who are new, I look at astrology through the lens of humanistic and evolutionary astrology. Now, both of those astrologies are focused on personal growth and self-actualization. Okay, we're not talking about fate and fear and life prison sentences with your chart, right? Everything on your chart has a reason and a purpose and can be used as a catalyst for something in your life to change. That's the way I look at it. So if you're looking for things about politics or something telling you how everything is screwed, I'm not your astrologer. All right. All right. So let's look at Saturn and Neptune in Aries. It's important to look at this before we go through the houses. And I did a deeper dive video, but I'm just going to briefly go through these energies and how they manifest themselves. So you can kind of keep this in mind for your own chart and your own life experience. So when we put these two planets together, we're essentially creating a bit of a catalyst for a crisis of initiation, especially in Aries, because Aries initiates things. Now, this isn't negative. Okay. Again, in humanistic and evolutionary astrology, it's not about bypassing, but it's also looking at things and going, all right, well, how can we make the most of this? Okay. So when we talk about Saturn, we're talking about structure. Okay. Saturn asks us to be real, to take responsibility, and to act with maturity, right? Saturn also takes a long time to get things done. We have to go through the hard bits of Saturn before we get to the good bits. Okay, keep that in mind if you are struggling a little bit with this transit, because there will be payoffs at the end for your continued endurance. Okay. Neptune, on the other hand, this planet is dissolving things. Okay. It's asking us to transcend our ego, to dream bigger and idealistically, to trust in something greater. Now, its challenging sides are it can make us feel out of touch with reality in the sense that we lose our groundedness, our embodiment. It can stick us into all forms of escapism or not wanting to really engage with life. Okay, so that can be a big challenge too. That when we're talking about Aries, we're talking about the realm of identity. Okay, it's the personal will, it's the development of the ego. Okay, it has to do with new beginnings in a larger, broader sense. So if we put those two planets in the sign of Aries, what we're talking about is the fusion of those two energies, right, into a spiritual initiation. But it has to be something that's concrete and grounded in reality also. So in a sense, we're saying, can you take inspired action, Aries, without falling into illusion, Neptune, or rigidity, Saturn, as an example? Okay. So when we're looking at this, it's not going to be the easiest of transits, but there's also this really great call to adventure and to challenge us to embody what we could call the spiritual warrior, right? Somebody who can dream boldly and also act responsibly. Okay. It's about the personal will and also how it does affect the collective. Okay. So it's being able to kind of like go back and forth on that tightrope a little bit. So how Saturn and Neptune is going to be ameliorating each other, right? And challenging each other. We talked about this a little bit on the last slide, but we're talking about inspired structure. Okay. So Neptune, the nice thing is that Neptune is going to soften Saturn up a little bit. Okay. That rigidity, that authoritarianness that sometimes Saturn can have, that really rigid, like stripping away of things. Neptune has the possibility here of just kind of like blurring the edges a little bit, just softening, so that we can take action, we can create structures that are also soul aligned, to remember that we can't just be rote robots, right? Droning on and on and on. We've got to have something that feeds our soul and feeds the higher good, right? And so when we put those two things together, we can avoid things like burnout. We can avoid things like becoming overly rigid or authoritarian. And that's great, right? So Neptune here can invite Saturn to build systems that are infused with meaning, that are infused with compassion, that have a sense of interconnectedness. Okay. And also personal sovereignty. So that's that nice, interesting juxtaposition there that we're going to be seeing over the next several years. We're talking about spiritual responsibility here as well. This conjunction is really offering us a call to become accountable for our visions, right? With Neptune in Pisces, Saturn coming in there at the end, but Neptune was in Pisces starting around 2011, right? And there has been this sense that we've had these grand ideals or these visions or kind of this utopianness or this rose-colored glasses fantasy about how we want things to be. And luckily, for the last couple of years, Saturn came in and said, all right, all that's great, but you need to get back in touch with reality, right? We need to figure out what dreams, what visions are actually grounded in some kind of reality, are practical. Can they be made tangible in some way? Or do they need to just kind of be dissolved away with the Neptune dissolution? Okay, so that's been really great. And now, when we're talking about these two planets moving into Aries, we're saying stop just idealizing this stuff, stop just living in fantasy, and actually do something, right? Do something about your dream. Okay, even if it's hard, persevere. That's going to be key with Saturn. We're also talking about embodied spiritual will. Again, Neptune, Pisces to an extent as well, can want us to transcend the body, transcend the ego. And that's great to a point. There's a point where we really can just get completely lost. And maybe this has been you or someone you know who has just become completely ungrounded, right? And you're like, where are you living? Right? So it's that call to come back home into ourselves and know that we do have a physical body and we are here to live with purpose on purpose. So this is an invitation to get in and do that, right? We're going to bring this Neptunian higher ideal, this vision, this dream, whatever it happens to be, creative project, into a Saturnian form. Saturn crystallizes things. Okay, it makes them tangible, it makes them 3D, it makes it so that we can interact with them. It's part of why Saturn rules boundaries, right? There's a boundary to each one of our physical bodies, and that's important. That's a good thing. So we need to do all of that, and we need to take some Aries action, right? Aries can help us with initiative, with courage, with boldness, with being able to take the leap and, in some senses, worry about the consequences later. Although with Saturn, that's going to be a little challenging. But we do have that opportunity to just get out of, laying in the field of daisies, dreaming about having a better life and actually doing it. And that's amazing, right? We can do that. Now, the key is going to be to really work with these energies in an integrated way. Okay. Instead of allowing them or focusing on their polarizing aspects. And that can be, again, in a personal sense and a collective sense as well, because these are collective planets too. So we're going to see this reflected in the world, our personal world and the world larger, right? Instead of focusing on those kinds of things, well, how can we unite things? How can we work with juxtaposition in a way where it is this alchemical fusion led into gold? Okay. If you are interested in more deep dives on the planets, I did do a couple of YouTube videos where I talk about these things in a lot more depth. For those of you, I know a lot of you like learning about the signs and the houses. And so it's not just this weird astro speak jargon, but you actually can look at your chart and start to have a personal relationship and command and understanding with your chart, which I think is really, really important, to have this sense of what are you connected to? Okay, instead of just me or someone else telling you about your chart, that you can start to be in a relationship with your own chart. So if you're interested in those, I'll link them below. All right, let's get to the houses. So the first house, this is our Aries rising souls. What we're talking about in the first house is the emergence of a new self. Okay. I put these things into some categories just to give you a little bit of an idea of what we're talking about here. So the core quest, and I love the word quest for Aries because it really is about going out into the unknown, leaving what was familiar behind and forging something new. Okay. So your core quest here is about constructing an authentic new self-image that is grounded in both inspiration and effort. What can your superpower look like? If we do this really well, what could the possibilities be? Learning to initiate life with both conviction and sensitivity. It's a call to embody a quiet authority that emerges from spiritual self discipline. So remember, these planets came from the 12th house, they came from Pisces. Now they're crossing over the ascendant and really bringing everything you learned from that 12th house, that time away, that need to do spiritual reflection into your new self. And here's some of the traps. So, confusion, right? Neptune brings confusion. Could be about your identity. It could be about what path to take. It could be about who you are in some way, this new form. It also could be fear, right? Of being too much, being too courageous or too bold or too outspoken. Although, well, it would depend on what planets you have in your chart. Usually an Aries rising can do that pretty well, unless they're struggling with being an Aries. Okay, sometimes when we look at charts, and you don't relate to the sign, there could be a reason that some energy is stuck in there. And Saturn is going to ask you to face that. Okay, face that fear of being Aries in a sense. Okay, and it could also be the opposite, that maybe you're not enough. Might feel that you're not doing enough, or you're not spiritual enough, or you're not bold enough, or whatever it is. So just watch out for those traps. The evolutionary edge. So this is like your rocket fuel for your own personal growth. We're talking about building a new identity, right? That's rooted in both self-assertion and compassion. All right. Second house. This is for Pisces rising. So, Pisces rising, you've had Neptune in your first house for a long time, changing and dissolving and spiritually altering and giving you this new weaving story of who you are and who you want to be. Saturn came through and is helping you to face some fears around that and restructure. So, now when we're talking about moving those energies into your second house, your core quest, and I love the word quest because it reminds me of Aries taking out their sword and going into the unknown and going, okay, here we go. All right, the journey's on. This is about for you in your second house. This is about new values and worth. Okay, so we're talking about clarifying what truly matters to you now. And we're talking about building your self esteem, your self worth, your self confidence from within. Now, your superpower here, the things that can go really well with this, is turning inspired values into practical systems. Okay, where you're aligning your money, you're aligning self esteem, you're aligning your work with your spiritual truth and your higher ideals. So it's not just action for action's sake anymore, it's that with something greater. The trap, where we can get hung up here. Okay, we could think of this as the shadow side as well. We're talking about material insecurity. Okay, both Saturn and Neptune can be challenging in the second house in the sense that Saturn will say there's not enough. So you may have to do some planning around your finances. Okay, it will say there's not enough, and that could be real or that could be an illusion, right? Neptune coming in could say there's amplifying that feeling of not enoughness because it feels like things become intangible. Okay. That may or may not be true. So another place here is we could be talking about sacrificing your values, right? Neptune can be where we sacrifice things. And it would be sacrificing your values in order to meet either someone else's standards, or it could be because you feel like you have to do that. That's the only way to get material gain. Or somehow it could be equating self-value with material power, right? I'm only enough as what I have. Okay. That's not true. There could be an identity here issue around what you have or what you own. So just watch out for that. Your evolutionary edge. This is your growth. This is your rocket fuel potential here. We're talking about honoring the value of your own vision and then following through with that with disciplined action. Okay, Saturn's going to say you need a system here to make things work. So use that system with Saturn. Do the work, Pisces rising. Third house, my beautiful Aquarius risings. Well, you have a bit of a complicated chart right now. So it's not on this chart, but Pluto is or will be crossing over your descendant at some point. And that's going to be huge as well. This is a lot about reconstructing not only yourself in a Plutonian way, but also in this third house way with Saturn and Neptune, your local community, your ideas, your communication, your network, and things of that nature. So when we're talking about just Neptune and Saturn, we're talking about new ideas and communication in the third house. Okay, your core quest, your call to adventure here is structuring your abstract ideas into clear, courageous communication. Okay. Your superpower when things are going well with this is looking for developing a voice that leads and heals. Speaking with both precision and creative insight. Okay, so really using what you have, your ideas, your knowledge, your networking, your community for yourself and the greater good. Okay, the trap where we can get stuck. This can be a time period where your mind actually feels confused or foggy or unclear in some way. You may find it actually hard to speak or want to speak your mind or be bold like you normally are. Maybe that's something that's actually really easy for you. And now it's like, wow, I'm stumbling over my words. What's going on? Don't let it freak you out. Okay. There may be a call to need to think more deeply before you speak. Okay. Saturn moving through the third house can restrict speech sometimes because it's looking for the right thing to say. And that can go either way, right? We can be afraid of saying the wrong thing, or we're just really learning to get more clarity and parse down our speech so that it gets straight to the point in a loving way because Neptune is there. Okay, there could also be the trap of fear of saying the wrong thing or the trap of juggling too many ideas, right? Too many networking events, too many things that we want to get done. Okay, so watch out for those traps. Your evolutionary edge, where you have this great soul growth potential, is learning that clarity doesn't diminish your vision, but it empowers it. Okay. So that's for my third house, Aquarius risings. Fourth house, Capricorn rising. You've been through a lot with Capricorn going through that through your rising sign, which would also affect your fourth house. So this has been a long period of change. And now we're coming to a sense of creating new inner foundation and new emotional security, which is going to be a great relief after all the big changes that you've gone through during the Pluto and Capricorn era. So your core quest, your call to adventure here is restructuring your emotional roots, healing ancestral or inherited burdens, and having a renewed sense of inner home. Okay, what does that feel like to you now? What do you want to do now after Pluto came through that first house and really changed the way you were in the world? Okay, who you are now and who do you want to be? This is a big time period for you to take those things and really ground them home and stabilize them home. Okay, whether that's your physical home or again, that's just but that has more to do with your inner home. Okay, your superpower where this can go really, really well is building an inner sanctuary. Okay, again, that could be actually a physical, tangible home or within your own home, body home, where your authentic selfhood can thrive. We're talking about potentially healing the family mythos, right? Doing so with your own self-initiated maturation. Okay. The trap, where things can get weird and go wrong. The inner fear of being unsafe. Okay, remember Saturn rules fear. Even with Aries here, we think of Aries as just always courageous. And that can be true a lot of the time, but sometimes we can get in this trap of like other people have to be our inner authority. Okay, they can fall into Libra side. So if that's been true for you, it can feel like, well, other people are my authority, and I can't really be that bold Aries fourth house grounded root system that I came here to be. Sometimes we have to develop that. And Saturn may bring in temporarily, or this could have been a long theme for you, especially if you were born with Saturn and Aries, this sense of home isn't safe, or home isn't secure, or home is lacking or cold in some way. So it's time to bring some of that Aries fire, that inner fire from within you, and infuse it into your own inner world. Okay. With Neptune here, it may feel like maybe there isn't a foundation, or somehow something there, maybe there's some loss within the family system that is quite challenging for a time period. And you really have to go in and rely on this new sense of inner strength with some kind of boldness. Maybe you that has to step up and kind of be the grounded spiritual warrior within your family system. And that can feel like a very heavy or scary burden. Okay. So don't let it get you super down. Or I guess what I would rather say is don't let it put out your inner fire. Okay. It may for a little while if something heavy does happen, but remember, tend to your inner fire, keep that going, keep your own emotional inner core, that strong inner core with the Aries lit up in whatever way you can, no matter how small the flame is at any given time. All right. So, your evolutionary edge, we're talking about spiritually aligned responsibility for your emotional life and your inner authority. And again, this could have to do with your physical home. Perhaps you are a new parent and things have really changed in your house, and you have to maybe step up and be a leader in a new way, but it's got to be aligned with who you are as well. So, looking at that for a beautiful fourth house, Aries, Capricorn risings. All right, the fifth house, Sagittarius rising. So we're talking about new creative expressions and joy. When we talk about the fifth house is a lot of things, but one of the things I look at here is it's the house of fun. Okay, it's romance, it's risk taking, it's gambling, it's children, it's our hobbies and the things that light up our own inner child. So for you, your new core quest, your call to adventure is being able to channel your visionary passion into disciplined creative works or leadership. Okay, your superpower here, if things are going really, really well, is we're talking about becoming someone who embodies joy, joy with purpose, joy with creativity, joy with vision, joy with creativity, right? And you may be able to inspire some other people along the way, whether that is you showing up as yourself. Maybe you've always wanted to take a pottery class and you do that, and it's really just bringing you this new sense of creative expression that's filtering out to other parts of your life, and people see that, right? And they're inspired to do their own let's say hobbies, or you become the leader of something in general. Like maybe you're the one who you've had this pottery skill for years and it's been dormant. And you're like, you know what? I really want to take that back up. Maybe I'll start a class and show people, or people are coming to you, right? And asking for your help in that way. That's just an idea there. So, looking at the trap where we can get caught, we're talking about creative inhibition, right? Saturn can make us feel like we lack sometimes. We can be talking about idealized romance, right? Or fear of being alone. So maybe instead of working on your own joy, your own, in a sense, self partnering, your own world there, you're relying too much on other people, right? To fulfill that for you. That can be falling into that Libra trap there. There could also be this sense of there's a pressure to perform. There's a pressure to be really masterful at whatever hobby you're doing, or there's a pressure to be liked, right? In the fifth house, this is the love that we give out. right? The 11th house is the love we receive. Sometimes we can get caught in this trap of like, if I don't create or am a certain way or showing up with my romantic ideals or whatever it is in a certain way, people won't accept me, right? They won't accept this big, bold Aries part of me. It may feel like that for a little while. So just watch out for that. Your evolutionary edge, where you can have some great growth, is we're talking about reclaiming a joyful self expression as sacred work. Right? That really is important to your soul to be able to have joy in your life and do things that light you up from the inside out. All right, Sagittarius rising. I hope this is an amazing transit for you. I really do. Okay, sixth house. We're talking about Scorpio rising. So for Scorpio rising, the sixth house is your house of work and service healing. Can also be our daily routines, right? The things that we repeat, our daily rituals and habits. So your core quest, your call to adventure is embodied service or healing through disciplined spiritual practice or soul aligned work. Okay. Your superpower, when this is going really well, we're talking about healing through structured action. You're going to have a gift for creating rituals or methods that combine inspiration and precision. In other words, you got to take that Neptune, which may make it a little bit funky for a little while, and use it. Put that Neptune to good work so that you have some kind of creative or spiritual practice in your day-to-day routines. Okay, because the trap here where we can get caught up is over idealizing things, right? Maybe we take on being of service to the point where we become self-sacrificial, right? To the point that it's causing burnout or it's causing a drain on our health or it's affecting us at work, right? We can get caught in this victims and martyrs, right? The 12th and the 6th house can kind of have that type of flavor to it. And it can really affect your day-to-day life and your physical health. So watch out for that, right? Make sure you include Neptune in a healthy way so that it doesn't get caught up in an unhealthy way that affects your well-being. Saturn, your evolutionary edge, learning sustainable ways to serve the soul. Okay, for yourself first and then others. So with Aries there, you're probably pretty good at putting yourself first in your daily routines. But if you're not, or you're going to struggle through it potentially through this time period, it's okay to balance that. Now, on the flip side, if it's always been about you and you don't look out for anyone else, well, Neptune and Saturn are going to kind of force you to mature a bit here and say, hey, there's other people beyond just you. You may have to include them as well. So, looking out for that growth potential for our Scorpio risings. Seventh house, Libra rising. We're talking about relationship contracts and projection. So, seventh house, Aries. It's an interesting quest here. Your core quest, your call to adventure, is maturing in how you relate. Okay, you're talking about building soulful partnerships that are rooted in integrity and vision. The superpower here, where this can go really well, is attracting partners of any kind, whether that's romantic, business, etc., who reflect your own spiritual work and responsibility. Okay, we're talking about boundaries here that become acts of love. And these are inner boundaries. Okay, they may be outer physical, like actual things in space, especially if we're talking about potentially contracts. This is also the seventh house, the house of contracts. That's why back in the day it was associated with marriage as a contract. Okay. So making sure you have the proper boundaries in place there is going to be important. And that starts from the inside. So having this inner kind of velvet rope, if you will, about what is working for you spiritually, working for you romantically, working for you in business, etc., so that it shows up in the outer world and the people you meet. The trap. So we can be, especially with, Mars rules Aries and Mars is passionate. So there may be a trap here in idealizing or minimizing, it could go the other way, yourself or others. Okay, watch out for rose-colored glasses and putting people on pedestals, but also watch out for minimizing other people as well, that no one's as good as you are. Okay. It can go either way. We're talking about responsibility imbalances in relationships. Again, that can be maybe you're the one that's taking on too much, or you're putting it all on your partner to do all the work. Okay. And we're also talking about boundary confusion. Well, whose responsibility is this part of the relationship or the contract or the partnership? Okay. Watch out for those things. Your evolutionary edge, where you can really do some rocket fuel burning here for your own personal growth, is we're talking about committing to soul aligned relationships that support mutual individuation. Okay. So, seventh house, I'm excited for you, Libra risings. I think it's going to be a really fabulous new kicking off for you. Eighth house, Virgo rising. So, eighth house, we're talking about transformation. We're talking about intimacy, and we're talking about power dynamics. Okay. We're also talking a little bit about what you inherit and other people's resources, deep merging with other people. That's what the eighth house also symbolizes. Because remember, this is Scorpio's territory in the kind of the standard zodiac, right? So, your core quest, your call to adventure is transmuting old emotional patterns into self directed power, new ways of integrating other people's resources. Okay. The superpower here, how that quest can go really well, is we're talking about deep healing potential here. We're talking about transforming pain into wisdom. Okay. That's a Saturn thing here. And power through spiritual emotional discipline. Okay. The trap. The big one here, fear of vulnerability. And that could also be fear around not just vulnerability, but actual loss in some way, feeling like you have to constantly be protecting yourself and not allowing something vulnerable to happen, or perhaps potentially choosing the wrong people to be vulnerable with. Okay, there could be some confusion for a while around intimacy and trust, but ultimately, this is to help you get new ways of being able to merge with other people while maintaining yourself, itself, and deep merging itself and intimacy. Okay. So, your evolutionary edge, where you can do some major growth here, is reclaiming your personal power by confronting illusions. That could be disillusionment as well, and limits with courage. So, Virgo rising, sending you lots of love on that deep eighth house journey. All right, ninth house, Leo rising. Well, you've got an interesting next few years, especially with Pluto passing over your descendant, whether it has already or it's going to, and opposing your first house. So that in itself is going to be a lot. But now we also have this ninth house of your vision, belief, and meaning. So there's a lot of deep changes happening, and they've been happening as well as Neptune and Pisces, Saturn and Pisces were going through your eighth house and really doing a big cleaning out around fear of intimacy and merging with other people and how you show up being vulnerable in the world. So now we're talking about moving to the ninth house, and we're looking at this core quest in the ninth house with Saturn and Neptune in Aries around building a new worldview. Okay. And this new worldview needs to align action and spiritual belief together. So it's about also what you believe now versus maybe what you've been taught to believe. Okay. So your superpower, visionary teachers, spiritual builders, and philosophical trailblazers. This could be yourself or learning from other people. Because remember, the ninth house is also about higher education. It's about higher ideals because this is Jupiter's house, right? So Neptune kind of likes being in the ninth house. It's got some shared vision there. Learning about broadening yourself or being a leader to doing that for other people, depending on where you're at in your life journey. So if you're a lot younger, this could be maybe it's you're finding new people that are really expanding your worldview, that are helping you into maturation. If you're a lot further along in your journey, maybe you've already had your first or even second Saturn return, it could be a call for you as an elder, as a mentor, as a teacher to show up in this way for other people. Okay, the trap here, and it's a big one, disillusionment. Disillusionment in general can really be challenging with Neptune going through the ninth house, especially. And kind of the good side of this is it could be disillusionment with dogma. All of a sudden, maybe you realize that you have been really stuck in some kind of dogmatic viewpoint, and it's time to let that go. Right? There could be some fear around being wrong in beliefs, whether it's you that feels like you're wrong or it's other people. You feel like they are not allowed to have their own belief system. Okay, so watch out for that. And with Neptune, always have to say it, especially in Jupiter's house, this could be around falling prey to charlatans. Okay, Neptune, unfortunately, can bring about deception. Watching out for that. Your evolutionary edge, where you can do some really big soul growth here, is around courageously living your truth through discipline, faith, and inquiry. Okay, learning more, get curious, take this time, even if it feels like it's hard with Saturn. Take it in small steps, right? Do a little bit as often as you can. Get on some kind of disciplined routine, and it will really pay off for my Leo risings. So, moving on. 10th house, Cancer rising. Oh, my dear Cancer risings. It has been a rough go the last few years, has it not? Oh, my. So, we've had Pluto going through that 7th house, crossing over the descendant at some point, really changing the compass of your chart, right? It affected your sense of self, probably for many of you, most of you that I've talked about, it affected your work, your day-to-day routine in some way, right? Moving from 6 to 7. And it probably affected your 10th house and your midheaven at some point, your public role, your career, your legacy, what you were working on. And that's a lot. Okay. Moving to Pisces and Neptune, going through the ninth house, there has been, with Neptune there, a lot of disillusionment, a lot of dissolving around belief systems. Okay. So we had this dismantling of probably work or big changes in your reputation, this dismantling or disillusionment around what you believed in, who you could believe, and then also huge changes in your partnerships, right? Over the last like 15 years, who you're around, what business contracts look like for you now, how you show up in relationship. And with Saturn here, Saturn rules over Capricorn. So that's your 7th house ruler, your descendant ruler, and also your 8th house as well. Saturn's really asking for a fresh new start. Okay, this is actually great news. So if everything has been falling apart from you, there's a really great opportunity to take on new vocation, okay, have new good things, new rewards or recognition in how you're perceived in the public and also with what you want for your legacy. Okay. If you didn't put in any work over the last like 15 years, especially the last 3 or 4 years, well, that's not going to go so well. But let's take a look at your core quest. So your core quest, your call to adventure, is taking responsible action for a spiritually aligned mission and or being recognized as a spiritual warrior, right? Someone who shows up with heart, someone who's authentic and aligned in their mission, can be bold, can take that initiative, can be that courageous leader that Aries can be, but who also is coming from a soft and generous heart. Okay, so your superpower here, if all this is going well, is authority that's rooted in vision. That would be Neptune, right? And ethical leadership. That's Saturn and Aries, right? The ability or the opportunity to create impactful work that matters to your soul now. After all these big changes you've been through, after all that dismantling that you've been through, what do you want now? What matters to your soul now? And it's going to be, even if it's slow, even if it's frustrating, which is really hard for Aries because Aries wants everything now, right? That's part of Aries' job, is to do things now. Even if it's slow, keep going. Okay. Because Saturn is going to say, all right, it may not be easy, but it will be worth it. Okay. And if you have been putting in a lot of work, it could be, again, a time where Saturn is like, all right, here we go. Here's the rewards for all your hard work. So it can really go either way. The trap is big here because it's around the fear of failure. And it could even be with Neptune there, the point of just dissolving into not trying. Or if something didn't go well and you it got that Neptune kind of hype and that Aries kind of hype, and it became really big and it was like, it was overly idealized and then it deflates, that can really be hard. If that happens, there's a call with Saturn to go back and restructure and or keep going. Neptune, re-examine where you may have been deluding yourself, okay, and keep going. So if that does happen, and you're afraid that's going to happen, you're going to have to test the boundary to know. So you're going to have to go out there and keep working if you feel like you're afraid of failing. Okay, just keep at it. It's really going to be important here. Or tweak things as you go. I mean, don't just keep bashing your head against the wall, but there's a fine line here. But, don't just give up before anything had a chance to mature either. So I hope that makes sense. There could be, for some, disillusionment with your career or with your public role, how you've been known, right? Could be disillusionment around your legacy, or potentially even some family issues here as well. The 10th and the 4th house have to do with our legacy, the 4th house being the roots of the family tree, and the top, the branches, what we are aspiring to, right, in our own life. There could be some things around unresolved authoritative issues, if that was something that showed up in your early life, that maybe you're going to have to dissolve and unwind so that you can take your own leadership of your own life now, finally. Okay. On traps, there also could be some fear. You could be afraid of ending up alone. Sometimes Aries, we tend to think of Aries as just being totally fine with going off and doing their own thing. And that's true. But sometimes there can be some anxiety around that. Sometimes Aries can fall into Libra and go, oh my gosh, like, I don't want to be by myself. Like, I don't want to be out here on the edge by myself. Can I have a friend, or can someone do something for me? Or, oh my gosh, what if I'm always by myself and no one gets me? And now what? Okay, so there could be some fear around that. There also could be some difficulty with taking action in general, especially with Saturn there, right? Saturn might make it feel kind of heavy, where Aries doesn't want to be heavy. It wants to be fun and light and gregarious. And it could also be with Neptune that you feel just kind of like 2 steps forward, 1.5, 2 steps back. Like, there could feel like, if you've ever walked in very heavy fog or driven in heavy fog, it's like, are we getting anywhere? I can't see the landmarks. Okay, so there may be some time where you have to kind of get into that inner faith and trust and keep doing the work. Your evolutionary edge, where things can go really well, we can get a lot of soul growth here. It's talking about courageously living your truth through disciplined faith and inquiry. Like, you really can build something here that reflects who you are now. After Pluto and Capricorn dismantled all the structures and all the systems that you thought you could rely on, right? It's really about you coming home to yourself in that public way. So, sending you lots of love. 10th house, Cancer risings. 11th house, Gemini rising. So with the 11th house, we're talking about community. We're talking about what we contribute to the whole, right? What we give out. We're talking about ideals and visions for the future. So with Aries here, your core quest, your call to adventure, is building or leading movements that are rooted in collective healing and vision. Okay, your superpower, if this goes well, talking about structuring future-oriented dreams, reforming community through spiritual integrity and disciplined action. So remember, you've had Neptune up in that 10th house of your public role in your career for the last 14 years, right? So that's changed who you've been and who you want to be and how you are. Now, what we're looking for, especially with Saturn coming in, is finding new community. Who fits who you are now, right? How can you structure that? How can you actually build the courageous new edge, find the exciting new things in your life that are lined up for you, that are soul aligned for you? Okay, the trap. Disillusionment with groups. Okay, sometimes with Neptune here, we can have a big clearing out. Like it's just everything eroded and dissolved away. So this could be that perhaps you've been, let's say, I don't know, it's a church group or maybe like a cooking course group or something that you've been a part of and you've loved for a really long time. And all of a sudden, Neptune can come in and just erode it away, where all of a sudden it doesn't feel right anymore, or it just disappears entirely. And there could be this void for a while. Okay. So that can be a really challenging thing, especially with Saturn. Saturn can make us feel really lonely. And in the house of groups and community, not having groups and community can really feel devastating in some way, especially with Aries here, you know, watching out for your identity being wrapped up in whether or not you're part of a group. Okay. There could be, so over identification with ideals or groups, right? And the loss of yourself. Okay. So it may feel like for a while, maybe you get into a new group or something and you think it's spiritually aligned or you think it's authentic or you think it's the new great thing that you want. But all of a sudden you're like, wow, I don't know who I am anymore. Wow, I've really changed and I don't know that I like it. Well, that's a call to move out of that group, right? Get back to yourself, who you are and who you want to be going forward. Your evolutionary edge, if all of this is going well, is the courage to build meaningful community and retain your individual selfhood. So if you're always the loner and you're rejecting community, right? It's time to find community and vice versa. So getting this beautiful balance of who you are now, what you want now, what do you want to contribute? Who's it going to be around? What's it going to look like? Right? You're on the precipice of a whole new adventure. So I wish all my Gemini risings very, very well with this transit. Lastly, but certainly not leastly, are our Taurus rising souls. So 12th house Aries. When we're talking about the 12th house, we're talking about the unconscious, right? It's the house of self-undoing. These are the ties that bind and we can trip over that we need to undo. Okay, so I also look at it that way. It can be the things that we just trip over, but it also can be the opportunity to untangle a big soul subconscious knot, if you will. And often these are things that are deeply buried in our either unconscious or ancestral line. So when we're talking about your core quest, your call to adventure is spiritual work. No surprise there. Facing your inner fears and surrendering control. Okay. Your superpower. If things go really well here, we're talking about deep healing. We're talking about psychic boundaries. We're talking about becoming a channel of clarity and compassion through what may seem more like quiet behind the scenes effort. That's not something we always associate Aries with, but in the 12th house, Aries can be a lot of courageous action that doesn't get played out in a public way, right? These are things that are going on. For example, if you work in creative arts of some way, like a theater production, you'll know very, very well that there's so much behind that velvet curtain, right? There's the set and there's the stage and there's the people with their headsets and the stage managers and there's the actors and dancers and singers and everybody coming and going. And there's been months of preparation, maybe years of preparation that's gone into all this, right? But when the audience comes into the theater, they don't know any of that story. They have no idea what's gone on behind that velvet curtain, most of them anyway, right? So that can really be what's going on here is it's a time of deep, deep, deep cleaning out, maturation, finding your inner authority, finding clarity, really getting spiritually aligned in a completely probably new way for you. So the traps, because there's always a trap, right? We're talking about potentially spiritual bypassing. Okay. And this wanting to get lost in Neptune, just, oh, it's fine, or really getting into escapism, or things aren't that bad. It'll just be sunny and optimistic. And when really Saturn might be saying, hey, there's some heavy stuff we got to deal with here. Let's take a look at this. Okay. Speaking of Saturn, there could be a fear around loss of identity, right? This could be some dissociation going on here, some numbing going on here. So watch out for those things, okay, over the next few years. Your evolutionary edge, where things can go really well and we can get some great growth out of this transit, we're talking about maturing through surrender, okay? We're talking about learning that spiritual mastery is an inner fire, right, that we have to consistently tend. So that's one of the things about the fire signs in general is when we think about fire, fire wants to go up, fire wants to go out, right? Fire is illuminating and it's bright. It's such an interesting place to have Aries, right? In that 12th house, where this is where the planets were moving right after, sunrise, where the sun is kind of come in. And if you've ever driven with the sun coming up in your eyes, it's like, woo, it's blinding. It's hard to see, right? So with the fire here, we may take for granted that the fire needs to be kept. It needs to be maintained, right? We may just think, oh, it's just super bright right now, and that's the way it is, and it'll always be. And actually, there's a lot of work there to maintain fire. If you've ever built your own fire, you know that you got to poke the logs and you got to get the tinder and you got to keep the sparks going. And if you don't do it in the right order, it can suffocate the fire, right? So that's something that will be really important over these next few years, is keeping that inner fire alive, tending to it, right? Letting things erode and burn away that are no longer working, right? That are going to make the fire go out. So it's a really interesting transit. I'm really excited for you guys. Of course, the next transit will be crossing your ascendant. So that's going to be a whole new you when these planets move through. You've already had a whole new you, right? With Uranus coming in and shaking up your life. So I think this transit will actually be a little bit easier because you've had to get used to having your life shaken up in ways that maybe were quite uncomfortable. So I would invite you to really embrace this transit and not look at it as, oh no, more 12th house stuff or like more hard things, right? Because Taurus can get a little like Eeyore as well. They can get a little depressed, right? Look at it as creating this new inner fire for yourself, that Taurus that you can build on, right? Because Taurus loves to build things that ultimately is actually going to bring you more stability, more peace of mind, all those kinds of things that Taurus loves and needs. So I'm really actually excited for all my Taurus rising souls out there. All right. So just to wrap things up, 2025 is so much about initiation. It's hugely changing dynamics. It's so many new beginnings. I mean, we have all of the outer planets changing sign and element. We have the social planets, Jupiter and Saturn, are moving into new signs and elements. We have the nodes are starting over. Okay. The nodes of the moon, when the north node is in Pisces and the south node is in Virgo, that's actually the start of a new nodal cycle. Okay, it's not the other way around. The nodes move backwards. They go from Pisces to Aquarius, Capricorn, Sag, and so on. Okay, they don't go Aries, Taurus, Gemini. So we have this tremendous new, which is so needed. I know for myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, even though there's been a lot of changes, it's also felt very stagnant over the last few years. It's felt quite, I think, depressing for many people. Not everybody, but for many people, it's been really hard. We've been deep into a lot of earth and water and difficult planet placements. There's been a lot of Saturn heavy energy in the planets and where they've been. And all of that has been a call to in a sense, clean out and clear out and redo our inner landscape so that we can come out with all this fire and air that's happening with the outer transits, which I've done some other videos on, and I'll do some more, is really coming out of the shell, coming out of all of that time of being in the cocoon that we've all been in to some extent or another. Some people way more than other people. Okay. It's really coming out of that and saying, okay, we have new expression now. We have new cycles that are happening. Aries is all about starting over. Okay. When 2026 hits, there's a transit that hasn't happened in thousands and thousands and thousands of years, with Neptune and Saturn at 0 degrees, the beginning of a new cycle. So there's a lot of exciting things here. There's a lot of places where we still need to keep the grounding and the work that we've had before, and taking all of that and letting it be fuel for our fire, letting the air carry us around to find new people, places, and things and ways of networking and connecting, because air is social. From this time of being so antisocial to moving back and being social. It's really exciting. So I'm looking forward to it. Again, I'm not overlooking the challenges, of which there are many, 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 but it kind of comes with the territory. If you're doing new things, if you're charting new courses, it's going to be dangerous. It's going to be unpredictable. It's going to be uncertain. It's going to be asking us to let go of things that we thought we would be able to hold on to forever. Well, here we are, right? On the edge. So speaking of that, don't let astrology scare you, right? Terrify you into not living your life, because that really sucks and it's totally unnecessary. Let astrology help you, right? Let astrology help you grow. That's one of the things I love so much about humanistic astrology, is it looks at especially the hardest combinations of things. And again, it's not about bypassing and, just putting, what's the expression, lipstick on a pig. No offense to pigs, they're really cute, but kind of trying to polish a pile of poo. It's still the poo, right? We're not doing that, but it's like, here's things that are challenging, and they can be catalysts for some of the best things that could potentially happen for you, right? That's the paradox of being alive. Sometimes the crappiest, most unwanted situations turn out to be some of the best things that happen to us. So if you're looking at a transit and you're like, oh man, I don't want to deal with this, or maybe it's your birth chart in general, you've been told that all your planets are in bad placements and, whatever. It's not true. They could be really challenged. That's true. But I would encourage you to look for people who have similar placements to you, if you feel that way, that have done something really spectacular with those placements, because it'll remind you that your chart's not a prison sentence. It may be quite challenging. The transits may be hitting you in ways that are really challenging, and it may suck for a while, but there's always something that we can do with the suck. Okay. To whether it takes a really long time to get to the good stuff, but it is possible to get there, because things change. We expand, we contract, right? There's crappy times, there's amazing times. So just keep that in mind when you're listening to any astrologer or looking at astrology in general. All right, my friends, thank you so much for getting to the end of this with me. I look forward to getting many more videos out for you guys. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or things that you liked or didn't like so much. Let me know about them, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks so much. Take care.